For some of us who grew up in South Dakota, Mount Rushmore was taken for granted. It really wasn't until about 10 years ago that I realized what was right in our backyard. My wife and I now come to Mount Rushmore several times a year for breakfast. We look at the monument over a cup of coffee, and often we'll walk the Presidential Trail. Gutzon Borglum, who carved the monument, stated the purpose of the monument is to communicate the founding, expansion, preservation, and unification of the United States with colossal statues of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. The monument is named for a gentleman by the name of Charles E. Rushmore. Mr. Rushmore was an American businessman and an attorney for whom Mount Rushmore is named. He was born in New York City, and in 1883 a tin mine, the Etta, was opened, which caused excitement among Eastern investors. In 1885, Rushmore was in the Black Hills of South Dakota to check the titles to properties for an Eastern mining company owned by James Wilson. Although an Easterner, Rushmore quickly made friends among the miners and prospectors. One day he was returning to the headquarters of Harney Peak Consolidated Tin Company located at Pine Camp, which was north of the great granite peak that would soon bear his name. With him were local businessman and William W. Chalice, a prospector and guide. As they neared the mountain, Rushmore turned to Chalice and asked its name. Chalice jestingly replied, "Never had any, but it has now. We'll call the damn thing Rushmore." The United States Board of Geographic Names officially recognized the name Mount Rushmore in June 1930. 40 years after the initial 1885 naming, Rushmore donated $5,000 towards Gutzon Borglum's sculpture of the four presidents' heads on the mountain, the largest single contribution. There were approximately 400 workers that worked on Mount Rushmore during the carving process from October 1927 to October 1941.
And then decide, is it time to take the money or we still hold out for the land? So stay tuned. Right now is they still holding out for the land. And mining,
this was extremely dangerous work. There were no lives lost.
Who are you going to send up? You're going to send a lawyer. Meet Charles E. Rushmore. Young attorney in New York City representing. Here
you can hear the guide speaking about Mr. Rushmore. Here you'll see the presidential walk, mildly strenuous walk that goes just below the memorial itself. Just to give you a bit of an idea of what was going on in the country and the world at the time, in 1927, which was just a few months before they began work on the memorial, Babe Ruth hit his 60th home run. Later that year, in May of 1927, Charles Lindbergh completed the first solo flight across the Atlantic. It was a 33.5-hour flight, 3,500 miles. It also should be noted that in 1940 a house cost $3,900 roughly, and by 1949 it cost almost $7,500. The average income in 1940 was $1,725, and by 1949 it was $2,900. In 1940 a gallon of gas was 11 cents, and by 49 it was 17 cents. I might throw in a bit of personal history here. In 1972 I bought a Toyota car, which was sort of a unique situation in my little hometown of Avon, South Dakota. I bought that car for $1,900, and there was a gas war going on at the time, and I filled up. The rate was $19.9 a gallon. Of course, they were losing money, and they were there was two stations, as I recall, close to each other, and embarked on a bit of a battle at the time. Of course, like I said, they were losing money at the time. In 1938, it should be noted that a new Emerson radio cost $19.65, and a man's suit was $24.50. Mr. Borglum chose the four presidents carved on the mountain to represent the first 150 years of our nation's history. George Washington, the first president on the mountain, led the early colonists in the American Revolution to win independence from Great Britain. Washington is the most prominent figure on the mountain. He was born in 1732 and died in 1799. Thomas Jefferson was the second president on the mountain. He was the author of the Declaration of Independence, a document which inspires democracies around the world. He purchased the Louisiana Territory from France in 1883, which doubled the size of our country, adding all or part of 15 present-day states. This was the beginning of the great western expansion of America. Jefferson was born in 1743 and died in 1826. Theodore Roosevelt, the third president represented on the mountain, provided leadership when America experienced rapid economic growth as it entered the 20th century. He was instrumental in negotiating the construction of the Panama Canal, linking the East and the West. Roosevelt was known as the Trust Buster for his work to enlarge corporate monopolies and ensure the rights of common working men. He owned a ranch in the Badlands of North Dakota, and as a lover of the outdoors, did much to preserve our nation's natural beauty and resources. President Roosevelt was born in 1858 and he died in 1919. Abraham Lincoln, the fourth president on the mountain, held the nation together during its greatest trial, the Civil War. Lincoln believed his most sacred duty was the preservation of the Union. It was his firm conviction that slavery must be abolished. Lincoln Borglum, the sculptor's son, once stated, "Many observers have remarked that the compassionate face of Lincoln is the most skillfully carved of the four faces on Mount Rushmore." Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and he died in 1865. Now, how much did the sculpture cost? Well, it cost $989,992.32. It took 14 years to build the memorial, October 4th, 1927 to October 31st, 1941. Are the faces eroding? No. The estimated erosion rate is about 1 inch every 10,000 years. Over 90% of Mount Rushmore was carved by using dynamite. Dynamite blasts removed approximately 450,000 tons of rock from the mountain. Now, there's a lot of interesting information about the memorial and the events that surrounded those days, and I would invite you to visit the Mount Rushmore website, where actually I gathered much of this information, and where you can find a lot more very, very interesting facts about the memorial. And we certainly invite you to come back often. You're certain to discover many new things on each of your visits, certainly many things that I was not able to talk about today. And thank you very much for visiting Mount Rushmore.